Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. I'm your host, Nick, and today we are back with a lot to discuss between New York City's next mayor, Kamala Harris and her book tour, Jimmy Kimmel and the First Amendment, the impending government shutdown, and the 2028 Democratic primary. I know it's early, but I have some thoughts. So let's jump into it, where Jimmy Kimmel, his show was recently canceled after offending Trump and then reinstated after the people spoke out. So I can't just go into it, how important it is that we protect the First Amendment. Now, that is our constitutional right, which is literally how this country was founded. So it clearly means a lot, and it's been just a part of the American tradition. It is just so important that we have the freedom to express our point of view, and even creating this podcast, right? This is the basis of free speech, where I have the right to share my point of view with people in the world. And I am just so grateful for every listener, anyone who's tuned in and took the time to hear what I had to say, right? Because this is how we learn from each other. We share our stories, exchange ideas, and hopefully this is how we can come together and be more understanding of one another, because that is how we're going to navigate all the shenanigans that's going on in the world. But that's what's going to make our democracy better, stronger, and safer for everyone. So again, the only way we're going to be able to protect our free speech is if we fight for it every day. What we're going to do, we're going to keep speaking out, keep sharing our thoughts, and hopefully y'all keep tuning in. If you like what you hear and want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or you can follow along on Instagram, and you can follow at NSFD_pod. Now, with all that said, Jimmy Kimmel, his show was suspended. We didn't know for how long, but fortunately it was only 2 days later. Now, basically what happened here was Jimmy Kimmel, he made a joke that showed President Trump in a negative light. So he had his FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, really apply the pressure to ABC and essentially pressure them into removing Jimmy Kimmel off the air. Now, even though they did that, it's one thing to have free speech, but in this country, we know money talks, okay? So what happened next was that we saw a huge backlash that led to millions of people canceling their Hulu subscription, their Disney Plus subscription, even people, going as far as to cancel their trips to Disney. We saw folks were so just shocked, but also just really, really pissed off. The fact that our president basically was able to apply pressure to take one of the beloved late night talk show hosts off the air. This was the first time in American history we've ever seen anything like that so deliberately and obvious for something that was so innocuous, a joke on television. Oh no, how risque. But the point is, it still happened because that's how pissed people were. So think about that, losing that much business over that decision. Yeah, that sent shockwaves to the upper echelon of the elites, right? We know that it's one thing to piss off President Trump, but it's also another thing to piss off the investors, the shareholders, right? The money makers, the CEOs, the business leaders, right? Because if you start messing with their money, that is when things start getting crazy. So, and that's what happened, right? So because of all the pushback, they knew they couldn't start bleeding money. So they put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air 48 hours later, whatever it was. And lo and behold, Trump's original goal was to remove Jimmy Kimmel, take him off the air. That way he'd have no viewers. But it turns out, I watched the show. There were over 6 million people who watched. So I think the next takeaway from that is number one, no one is safe. Number two, right, I really like that Jimmy Kimmel pointed out, while the direct attack was Jimmy Kimmel as the big name, it could potentially mess with other people's, livelihoods. The fact that so many people, a staff of over 100, work on the show between production, hair and makeup, right? People who are booking the show, right? And everyone who just does all the unglamorous work, but that really make the show happen. they're so important and a part of the industry, especially with like, it's not even a stable work, right? So like just the fact that like drop of a hat, show could be canceled. Well, then they'd be out of a job. So it's really, it's hopeful to see that, there was pushback and things, were settled for now. But, point three, there's the idea that something bigger and darker could still happen next is very unsettling. So, keep a lookout, think before you speak, right? Not like Jimmy Kimmel said anything wrong, but like we know people have either pushed the boundaries or gone too far or said worse things. So I think now is the time to really think about, is it worth saying? Is it necessarily going to move the needle in the direction you would hope, or would it not cause more problems that outweigh the good down the road? Now, really quickly here, we know that we are about 5 weeks away. At the time of this recording, we are 5 weeks away from electing a Democratic Socialist Muslim immigrant mayor of New York City. So with that said, super excited that Zohran is on his way to win. But not so fast. We just learned that, breaking news, Mayor Eric Adams is dropping out of the race, so he will no longer be actively campaigning to run for re-election. However, because Mayor Adams is stubborn as he had refused to drop out sooner. Why? Well, he really thought he had a shot. He really thought he can kind of bring together his coalition. But with that said, right, as stubborn as he also, as competent as he also didn't make the decision in time to get his name removed from the ballot. So in November, you will still see Eric Adams' name on the ballot. Is he running? No. Is he on the ballot? Yes. Can you still vote for him? Yes. Should you? No. Point being is, the fact that Eric Adams is still on the ballot because he made this decision after the deadline just shows you how competent he was as a mayor. But more importantly, this will help Zohran Mamdani because those people who were going to vote for Adams were never going to vote for Zohran anyway. But it also just makes Adams look like so foolish because when he comes in with like maybe 1% of the vote or 10%, whatever it is, with his name on the ballot, but like not actively running, it'll be really weird because Cuomo or Curtis Lewa would love to get those votes. So if you know anyone who was thinking about voting for Eric Adams, now would be your time to tell them, well, they are no longer in the race. You might want to consider Zohran Mamdani. I know it's a hard sell, but he is the only candidate talking about affordability, making New York a city that we can be proud of, but also changing the status quo of how things have been here and building on a lot of the errors and mistakes that Eric Adams had fumbled across over the past 4 years. So making New York City better and more affordable, yeah, that's my guy. Zohran Mamdani for New York City Mayor. All right. Speaking of Zohran Mamdani, who just had his name mentioned by Kamala Harris on the Rachel Maddow show. So interestingly enough, I didn't watch the full interview in its sequence. I actually watched the interview in clips across different people's Instagrams. So maybe not the best way to research. But what I can say, I think all the points are still valid, right? I would not vote for Harris for the Democratic primary based on that interview alone. I can go laundry list of why not to, but like that alone, saying that democracy thrives in capitalism, who is it thriving for? Minimum wage has not gone up. People go into medical debt because they can't afford their health care. Inflation is still really bad. It was bad during Biden years and Harris years, and it's still bad during Trump years. How is capitalism thriving in democracy? Like, for who? Not you or me, I bet. But with that said, it's like, yeah, she really went on a limb to like make that case. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. If she would win, she wouldn't be fighting for the working class. She'd be fighting for her, corporate donors and the upper echelon of society. The other thing, when she gave the most tepid endorsement for a candidate I've ever heard, when she's like asked by Rachel Maddow, would you endorse Zohran? She goes, yeah, sure. That was her response. I'm like, wow, for a former vice president, you sure know how to be formal. So I'm just like, what can you do to like just be nice. Like, just be like, hey, you know what? Zohran's done a really great job galvanizing support from young voters. We need that in the Democratic Party. He won the Democratic nomination. I'm always proud to support the Democratic nominee. I endorse the Democratic nominee. That's all she had to say. Support the nominee. I support the nominee. I endorse the nominee. Goes on. Like, that's really it. But instead it is like, sure, okay, I guess. Like, you want to be the leader of the party when he won the nomination of the nation's largest city, getting the most votes in primary history? Like, what? It's just so weird. It's so awkward. It's weird. And you know it's not for good reasons. You know it's, again, like, she doesn't want to piss off her donors, so she's got to, like, throw him under the bus. On top of the Rising Stars comment, if y'all heard that, where she then goes, I don't want to over-index New York City, and I know they think they're the center of the universe. It's like, well, no one's saying that but you. I mean, when there's a lot of media companies here, influencers are here, I live here. It's just like, yes, New York City has a lot of influence because a lot of people are here. So it's a numbers game. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of money and power here. That's by design. So, like, don't blame us if we're, in, like, woven into the fabric of New York City that's, like, designed to be this powerhouse, juggernaut, cultural epicenter of the world. Like, that's just how it is. And, really saying, like, well, don't want to over-index New York City. I was so surprised she even gone on a limb to say that. I'm like, just because the biggest city in the nation had the largest swing away from Harris, right? She had to throw us all under the bus. I'm like, wow, your ego was really hurt that you did not support, that you did not perform better in the nation's largest city. It's also one of the most diverse. Queens County being the most diverse county in the country. Yeah, says a lot about Harris. Again, she had a lot of challenges during that election, but like, yeah, that was all on her. So the fact she would not distance herself from one of the most unpopular presidents, right? People were hurting the economy. We saw how foreign policy was handled, and she still said, I'm going to keep going. And we're all like, nope. And here we are. So, yeah, so in the Rising Stars comment, she then goes to say, well, like, there are some other great mayors in XYZ places. And it's like, you know what, that's great. But lo and behold, one of the mayors that was supposed to be a rising star actually lost her election to a Republican. So I'm like, Zohran won his election. So, like, if you're going to even make the case of, like, oh, well, like, they're better because they're not Zohran, it's like, oh, because they're not democratic socialists, they're not progressive, they're more center-left moderate, is that why they're better? Or rising stars? Like, but when you make the case of, like, trying to turn off someone's shine, it's like tearing someone down to uplift someone else. I'm like, that's not leadership. If she wants to be the leader of the Democratic Party and win, like, Democratic nomination, let alone the presidency in 2028, it's like, you easily could have just said, Zohran did a great job. You know who else is doing a good job? Keep your eye on these two. I think they're all contributing to the Democratic Party in a way that makes it a big tent, that makes it wonderful. I would love to lead everyone and see this be a part of our vision. What a world to live in where Harris could have just been so nice to everyone. But no, she just wouldn't give Zohran the benefit of the doubt, wouldn't give him an ounce of credit. Nope. I'm like, and you want to be the leader of the Democratic Party? Like, do you? So weird. So anyway, what I'm talking about is Harris and her book tour. 107 days, right? Now, granted, she did have a lot of challenges. Number one, the biggest takeaway from the book. I didn't read the book, full disclosure. I did not read it. I do not plan to. I will not spend I will not spend a dime on that book. If you did, good for you, right? Support the economy. Support your local bookshops if you can get it there. But my point is, there was a loyalty test that Kamala Harris was faced with. Like, okay, so the loyalty test that people are talking about is, Biden was really forcing Harris to submit to any order or request that he wanted. Basically saying, like Harris running as VP with 170 days, that was all supposed to be Biden's legacy. He didn't want her to run as her own president. He wanted her to run as his second term. Biden choosing to run for re-election was the worst decision. Well, I mean, there's a lot of bad decisions out there, but for any American president to have made in the 21st century. I will stand on that. Biden choosing to run for re-election was the worst decision a Democratic president has ever made in the 21st century. I'd even go far back as saying maybe Jimmy Carter. And like, yes, we can also say like things that transpired after October 7th with Biden was also horrible. But yeah, that one hurt the most, him choosing for re-election, because now all of our problems are exacerbatedly worse because this guy really thought he was a two-term president. Sorry, he was not that great. He was like George Bush Sr. He only deserved one term. So like, yeah, Biden was never a two-term president, but he somehow convinced himself that he was, and here we are. So because of that, he really put a lot of pressure on Harris to run on his moderate stances, don't distance herself from his economy, continue all the crazy stuff that was happening in Gaza, right? She submitted to that. She said, okay, I'm going to be as loyal as I can as your vice president because you are the president of the United States, one of the most powerful people in the world, and I will do as I am told because that is my job as vice president. Vice president doesn't really have a job. It's really like do what the president says. Look it up in the Constitution. It's very basic. But with that said, the takeaway from the book was that she was challenged with appeasing the Bidens, where even Jill Biden, talking to second gentleman Doug Emhoff, Harris's husband, that, she approached him being like, y'all better be loyal. And then Doug was like really mad and was like, why are you asking us to be loyal when like you guys are the wackadoodles? But also like, why would you tell us that? Like, you think we're not loyal? Like, what have we shown to not be loyal? Like, it's so weird. So like, I'm on Team Harris for this one. We're like, Biden in that loyalty test didn't need to do it, inappropriate, not calculated in any way, shape, or form that was what could have produced a good outcome. So very inappropriate all around. So, and here we are because he made a horrible decision. So I wasn't at the book tour stop in New York City, but I do know things went down. Let's put it that way. So for those who might not have heard, at the book tour, Harris was joined by Aaron Parnas, who's a part of like Midas Touch, who's done his own journalism, let's say, who was on the list of 90 influencers that Taylor Lorenz had recently revealed, right? In the contract, right? Trying to like get his, getting paid for by the dark money group. So he was there interviewing Harris, which makes sense, right? Like, it's that pay-to-play scheme. He's got to play nice. He's not going to ask Harris any challenging questions. That way he has access to the former vice president. But that's just the name of the game, right? So I get it. But at that event, while Harris was apparently doing a really good job speaking more authentically, right? She wasn't campaigning, so she can kind of like speak more of what's on her mind. And for those who did read the book, like I've been hearing like, she really does take some swings and take some risks by what she revealed. So like, for instance, obviously calling out the Bidens for being like kind of rude to her and saying how, Harris wasn't truly respected in the White House. Only if Joe Biden was in the room, she was respected. But once he walked out, like they would not treat her the same. And, that is racism very much in the Democratic apparatus, right? The White House, like you would think things would be very, HR heavy, let's put it that way, but nope, people still didn't give her the respect she deserved. So speaking of that, there was also a protester at this book tour stop in New York City where, based on like, videos, you can kind of see, like, piece it together. It was like one guy who like was disgruntled over, how she handled Gaza, right? And people have a lot of thoughts about that, so I'm not going to go into it. But point is, for people who were at the event, no one wanted him there. There were not many, if any, people cheering him on. It was inappropriate, wrong time, wrong place. And, like, that's the thing. Like, Harris is a private citizen now. Like, yes, we know she's campaigning for 2028. Yes, we know she had, like, she was in the room when these decisions were being made. But is this the right time and the place to, like, go on a book tour stop to yell at her? Like, it's kind of like this level of crazy that, like, it goes beyond respectability politics and it goes beyond having, like, any sense of, like, decorum. And it's like, I'm not saying we need to be super respectful and decorum all the time because, right, you need some pushback and some challenge there. But, like, is this the most effective strategy to pay money for a ticket to get in the room, pay like hundreds of dollars, very expensive. Also to like infringe on other people's times. Like, sure, he wasn't a fan of Harris, but like everyone else in the room was. So like, why would you want to ruin it for them just so your voice could be heard and not theirs? Because here's the thing. Sure, he has every right to protest, but did he literally change anyone in that room's mind? Was anyone saying, like, oh, you know what? Why did I waste my money buying this ticket for this person, Harris? Why? Oh my goodness, I should. I'm glad he interrupted the entire event so I could hear exactly what he was thinking, because you know what? I would have never thought that until he said it. Oh my goodness, like now I am such a changed human. No, no one thinks like that. No one ever thought like that. Especially an event like that where like clearly people are paying money to see her. Yeah, that shows there's an investment in Harris. So they clearly like her a lot. So to kind of ruin that experience for them, and it's like, sure, ruin that experience versus the other stuff going on. Like, yes, that's clearly way more ruined. I get it. But at the end of the day, it's like we can't just try to like yell over each other because they're not doing exactly what we want. And like, they will never, like, okay, so like, okay, put it this way. I'll say this now and I'll circle back to it. The left is not going to win in 2028. Not going to happen. And I say that not because of this protester, it's not one guy, but it's because there is no sense of urgency to understand the level of coming together or unity that needs to be happening. We can disagree, but we need to unify. Republicans, they disagree a lot. Oh, but they unify. That is why they tend to do better in elections. Now, granted, the special elections that have been going on for Democrats have been winning a lot. But at the end of the day, it's the Republicans who are much better at unifying, coalescing, and standing strong in what they believe in. The left doesn't. The left always wants to, purity politics, like, I'm right, you're wrong. It's like this shame-based, it's like guilt-driven organizing, which is so weird. I don't like it. And like, we need to do better to get out of that behavior. And like, how can we be kinder toward one another to get them to hear us? Well, interrupting an event that's going to make more people upset with you isn't going to do it. I mean, yes, in the online space, it creates more content, right? People share videos. They're like, oh my God, guess what happened? See it on TikTok, see it on X, see it on Instagram. Like, yes, like content creation is there with the protester. And like, then it just gives everyone on like online, oh yeah, good for you. Like. I mean, retweet. Like, sure. Maybe you'll inspire more people online, but it's really like this self-fulfilling kind of mechanism where like clearly it just kind of keeps the pressure on, but only within that same group. Like, again, I don't think like interrupting events like that, but even if it was like Trump, I'd be like, is this the event to do that with or for, right? Like, time and a place. With all of that said, I give Harris a lot of credit on the book tour, right? Being interrupted, she had to like, cool the temperature down, or I think she was even saying, which isn't easy to do. It's always very awkward, especially when like, she's responsible for everyone in the room and their safety, right? Came to her event to like see her and listen to her. So I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was right. I think it was an ineffective use of protesters' time and money. And I really don't think that it changed much. The people who don't like Harris, not going to like her after that anymore. They're not going to like her any less. So I would just hope that if anyone is looking to actually create change, they can do it in a more effective way that actually changes people's perceptions on a deeper level. And it's not just like creating content for rage baiting online, because that's essentially what a lot of this comes to. But yeah, so 2028, we've got Harris, we've got Gavin Newsom, we've got Pete Buttigieg, and AOC. AOC is going to run for Senate, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that, but I've been seeing her make moves throughout New York State, right? Like, even during the Fight the Oligarchy tour, even like around that time, she was visiting, upstate districts. She didn't have to. If you notice, most members of Congress, they really stay in their district, if not in the vicinity, but they'll coordinate with local leaders, right? Like, it's in the district. It makes more sense, but for New York City, it's more like logistical. Logistics make sense, right? But now when I see her going upstate, I'm like, yeah, you're not going just to take a look at the mountains up there. Like, you're going to organize in those communities because you know you will need their votes one day, which is great. I support that. Like, she's playing the long game, so good for her. And with that said, like, I really hope she wins. Like, she'll win, but I really hope she doesn't get screwed. Because, like, I could also see, like, Dan Goldman jumping into that race for New York Senate, right? If Chuck Schumer bows out, then it'll be like AOC versus a moderate, and that moderate could win. Like, AOC is very popular, but if enough people on the left don't turn out to vote, she would lose, right? Because AOC's, her base is the left. Like, she needs those people to come out and vote. So if they don't, it's not going to happen. But that's why we need to keep organizing and sharing our stories so, like, AOC can win in a landslide and become one of the youngest senators for the state of New York ever. That would be amazing. It also sent a huge message. Just like when she won in 2018, it sent a message across the country that our time is now. Progressives are rising up. Young leadership is on the way in. Because if you remember when AOC won in 2028, that was the same year Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley. That was the year the squad was all elected to Congress, but it was all after AOC. The primary was June of 2018, and they all got elected in the following months. So, again, if AOC wins to become New York Senator and gets Schumer out of the picture, that will send a huge message for what other young leaders could rise up to run for Senate, run for Congress, right? Governor. There's so much possibility, there's so much opportunity, but we just need to support young leaders that are progressive and are willing to fight for something. Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing watching Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries handle anything thrown their way. You even had Hakeem Jeffries saying, like, congratulating Eric Adams on his, like, courageous leadership of New York City mayoralty. And I'm like, what was he courageous for? What did he do? So you're saying defunding public education in New York City, that's courageous? You're saying, you know, his clear corruption with bribes and, like, clearly playing into Trump's hand is courageous? Like, oh my gosh, who are these people? Like, who is telling Hakeem Jeffries to say this? Like, I feel like there has to be something else going on, because I could not imagine someone waking up with having that thought in their head and be like, I'm gonna say this today. And I'm like, what? And you're like the minority leader of the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives. Like, you're not like president of, like, your school's political club. Like, no, you are, like, big business. This is, like, huge. Like, technically, if Democrats won back power and they won the majority in the House of Representatives, like, he would be third in line. It'd be Trump, J.D. Vance, and then Hakeem Jeffries. Isn't that wild? Like, that's the line of succession, right? Oh my gosh. So it's so bad having Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. It's so crazy to have these two, like, run the party into the ground. Like, it's just, oh my gosh. It's like they set sail on the Titanic full speed ahead into that iceberg. It is so bad to watch. It's so embarrassing to watch. They're like, all right, we're gonna go around it this time. It's like, nope, you went right into it. Yeah, right into the iceberg. It is so bad. So with all that, we definitely need new leadership. We can't have Hakeem Jeffries or Schumer in there for much longer. It's, like, really bad. We need to get Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer out of leadership, where they keep running us into the ground, making Democrats look so weak, ineffective, incompetent, and just, like, spineless. They don't fight for anything. They give wishy-washy answers. It doesn't play well in our media ecosystem. But even, like, you can't get a straight answer out of them. So it's like, why bother talking if you're just going to lie or, like, speak half-truths the whole time? No one wants that. People want honest, authentic, clear, but also positive, right? Like, their messaging is just so bad. Ugh, they don't know how to communicate because they want to be friends with everyone and be nice to everyone. It's also like, no, just stand for something. You will piss people off no matter what you say, and you're pissing more people off now because you're not appeasing anyone. You're trying to appease everyone, but in doing so, you're appeasing no one. But they haven't learned that yet. So until they do, can only hope things change. So with the shutdown, I hope that Trump takes the big L for this, right? I really hope he does. American public sentiment is going to be tricky because, again, Democrats might not walk away as the winners or unscathed. But, yeah, they're going to need to do something because if they do walk away looking worse than going into this, they are so done as a party. And we will definitely see more of a vigor and excitement for pushing for a third party. Because at this point, it's like, yeah, you're the opposition party or you're like the party not in power, but like even with the little power you have, you squander it every single time. So like, what's the point of supporting a weak and ineffective party when you could just start a new one, basically? So we'll see how that plays out. We support democracy. So if you do too, I would love for you to follow along and subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy. And you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or you can follow along at NSFD_pod. Between Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, AOC, let's say AOC runs for the Senate, right? Then we've got Newsom, Buttigieg, and Harris. As of right now, Harris, the messaging's not great. She's not really seen in some of the bigger moments. A lot of the statements she released are very wishy-washy. A lot of her tweets read like Obama-era Twitter. So it's like they're nice, but what are you really saying? They're quite vague, right? There's a lack of clarity. But also, like, is she even writing them? Probably not. So it just doesn't come across as, like, authentic. Doesn't come across as, like, like the idea of what a president should say, but not what she's actually saying, if that makes sense. And yeah, like, she's not doing herself any favors by, like, trying to, like, not support Zohran at a time when, like, he's very popular in America, let alone New York City. So it's like, you really want to be, like, so, like, cavalier about, like, one of the most popular candidates in the country, let alone, like, who actually did super well in places where she did not. Like, she should be taking notes, right? Yeah, so, like, I won't be voting for her in a Democratic primary, especially not at this time. But then between Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg, right? Buttigieg, as of right now, he's been making the rounds with the podcast bros, right? Trying to clean up his image, come across as more authentic, right? But he's not that kind of guy. He's very much like a technocrat, like just very like must do everything by the books. Like he's very much that kind of like geeky, nerdy, like, I get it. I kind of fall into the same boat a little bit, but like, guy has no riz. He is as plain as sliced bread, okay? And there was like nothing about him that like gets enough people like excited to like organize for him like on a massive scale. Now I know there's folks out there who love Pete Buttigieg. They think he's so smart, intelligent, and like really savvy. But then I question him like, what about his organizing chops? Like, he knows how to connect with people authentically in like, rural areas, swing states, right? But he doesn't speak to progressive issues. If you notice, he doesn't support Medicare for all. He supports universal access to healthcare. He doesn't support democratic socialism. He'll say, big tent party, everyone is valued. But like, it's never through progressive policy. That's the thing. If you always listen, it's never socialist. It's never truly progressive. It's always like what a nice center-left idea could be, which isn't bad, but we know there could be better. And then even with, so, he is what he is. As of right now, not my fave, right? But out of the three, I'd be more willing to vote for Pete Buttigieg over Harris, personally. But that's only if the primary was held today. But then otherwise, Gavin Newsom, like, I give him a lot of credit because he is the only one taking bigger risks, bigger swings, right? between matching Trump's energy, not only on Twitter, right, with like the way he's talking about things, which is good. A lot of people like that. He got a lot of follows, a lot of retweets, a lot of engagement, right? Like mocking Trump's, you know, wild, way he talks is wild. So it's really good that Gavin Newsom is making fun of him for it because it is well deserved, and no serious leader should ever be speaking like that. Like, no, just be more like talk with more seriousness, talk with more eloquence, right? You also definitely need like just like I don't want to say conviction, but just more like clarity, really. Trump doesn't do that. He's very just all over the place. And like it's one thing to be authentic, it's another to be like, you know, a respected leader. Cause like making people fear you is not respecting you. It's still fearing you. And Trump hasn't learned that yet. But anyway, yeah, so then Newsom, his tweets, doing a good job with that, but even more so matching the energy with the Republican Party, how Trump called Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, to give him more seats in Congress, 5 seats in Texas, bumping up their, changing their electoral maps for Congress, which they did. But then Gavin Newsom is saying, aha, not on my watch, we're going to do the same in California. So now they redrew the maps, but they will now have the people of California, Prop 50, vote on it in November. So if you're a registered voter in California, make sure to vote yes for Prop 50, which would give California 5 Democratic seats in the House of Representatives to counter what the Republicans are doing in Texas. So I love that Gavin Newsom is doing it. It's very popular right now. It needs 50% to win. I think it will win, which is great. And then, you know, some of the other things, though, which are not so great, he's made just inappropriate but, like, just out of touch comments about the trans community, right? Like, I get that he's trying to meet America where they're at. Because when you think about it, like, according to Pew Research, 60% of Americans do not support trans people in sports, you know, same with trans people in the same bathroom as their gender, right? Like the American public doesn't support it. Like the majority technically doesn't. Doesn't mean we should all follow along because at one point in time, same-sex marriage was 60% unpopular with the American public. But it took time to organize and grow out of that. That's where we are right now with a lot of trans issues. We're still in the not so popular side. But trans rights are human rights, and our country has to grow out of this, going from 60% unpopular, so it becomes popular. But we're not there yet. The trans community is a very small community. It's about 1% of the population. It doesn't mean they don't exist or don't deserve to exist. My point is that a lot of people don't have exposure to having trans neighbors, friends, coworkers, people in their lives for them to understand that they are very much a part of our existence in our democracy. So all the vile rhetoric that Trump is spewing these days for the trans community, it's so harmful and so hurtful and inappropriate that anyone who supports that should really second guess and really question, you know, what kind of moral character are they trying to, like, you know, live in this world? We're like telling people that like they don't deserve to exist because why? Because you disagree? Because no one's forcing you to be trans. So like why are you trying to take their life away? That's just so harmful and hurtful and like violent, actually. So the thing that I don't like about Gavin Newsom is like he was going on his podcast to talk about, yo, I agree with you. There's some serious issues here with trans folks in sports. And it's like, is there though? Right? Like, let's worry about the mass shootings that are happening in this country before we even think about who's playing what sports. Like, I think that is just so wild that we have not solved some bigger issues, but we're worried about this. Makes no sense. So, yeah, really disappointed in Gavin Newsom trying to meet people where they're at, quote unquote, but doing it in a way that's like very offensive, but also like, you know, leads to some of the harm that happens in the world. So it's like if he could just be a leader, you know, try to get people to meet him where he's at, being more inclusive with his language, being more supportive, right? More affirming. That would be great because then you actually stand for something and people will get on board with that, right? He has to help usher that in. But because he's trying to like pretty much bring, young guys back into the fold. Like he's being very cautious and calculated with how he's doing it, and I'm not thrilled. I'm happy with the risks he's taking. I'm happy how he's meeting Trump's energy, but I'm not thrilled with his full message. Now, granted, I doubt that Gavin Newsom would necessarily put forward policy that would harm trans folks. I don't think he would do that. Trump is doing that. Gavin Newsom would not. So, to be frank, while Newsom hasn't done anything specifically negative to the trans community in California as governor of California, I think he'd be okay. So, I think he'd be okay. So, in terms of President of the United States, I would vote for him in a Democratic primary. I would. I think weighing everything, he's at least putting himself in a position where I know I would vote for him in a Democratic primary. If it's between Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, and Harris, probably him. Harris had her chance, made too many bad decisions since he's still not messaging well. Newsom could do better with messaging, but he is matching Trump's energy, and he is making moves in his position of power to do so. And Buttigieg is just on the podcast circuit. I really don't see him doing much. And, I'm sure he's doing stuff that maybe it's not on my radar, but yeah, he could be doing more. He could be doing more. So we'll see how it all evolves over time, right? It's only September of 2025. We have until 2028, which we know they're going to start announcing in 2027. They'll probably announce right after the midterms, right? So November 2026, hopefully Democrats win the House. I don't know if they will. I hope more progressives win their seats. I hope any progressive that's running wins. There's only a handful of progressives that I don't think are worthy of winning at this point. But I will say, no, how do I say it? Yeah, for the most part, we really do need every progressive to win their seat. Some are more qualified than others, but it would be so great to see a progressive takeover of the party, kind of like the Tea Party in 2010. Democrats, they got squashed, done, game over. It was so bad, but they did it. They sure did. Republicans, Tea Party took over, and they won a lot of seats in the House. So I hope this is Democrats' time to shine. I hope they can do it. I'm not very hopeful, pretty doubtful, but I guess we'll see. Yeah. So with all that said, if you like what you see and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe to Not Suitable for Democracy. And you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Or make sure to follow along at NSFD_pod. Thanks so much for tuning in. And remember, democracy is not suitable without you.